The digital hum of the server room was the soundtrack to his life, a monotonous drone that followed him home and settled into the quiet corners of his apartment. David unplugged his security fob and dropped it into the ceramic bowl by the door, the clatter unnervingly loud in the silence. It was 10:47 p.m. Another Tuesday spent migrating data and troubleshooting network errors for people who neither knew nor cared who he was. He pulled a container of leftover pad thai from the fridge, the smell a weak imitation of the real thing, and sat on the edge of his sofa. The apartment was neat, curated, and profoundly lonely. Each piece of furniture was a sensible choice from a catalogue, each book on the shelf alphabetized. It was the home of a man who had his life in order, yet felt none of it. On his nightstand, propped against a stack of programming manuals, was a small, crudely carved wooden bird, its wings outstretched. A vendor in Moalboal had been selling them, and Leela had bargained for it with a laugh, her voice a melody against the backdrop of tricycles and street hawkers. It was his anchor, a tangible piece of a life that felt more real than his own. He ate his noodles while scrolling through market analytics on his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating the tired lines around his eyes. He wasn't living, he was waiting for the next ticket, the next long haul flight, the next 6 weeks of borrowed time. Then, it happened. The vibration of his phone on the coffee table was a jolt to his system. He snatched it up, his heart quickening before he even saw the screen. Leela, I can't sleep. His thumbs, usually so precise on a keyboard, fumbled. The drone of the server room in his memory faded, replaced by the phantom sound of geckos chirping on a humid night. David, everything okay? The three dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. He held his breath. He imagined her in her small room above the family's convenience shop, the tin roof contracting in the cool night air, the scent of hibiscus drifting through the open window. He had a meticulous catalogue of these imagined moments, a library of illusions he'd built to span the 8,000 miles between them. Leela, just missing you. It feels empty here. There it was, the hit. A warmth spread through his chest, potent and immediate, pushing back the grey monotony of his own world. She felt it too. This wasn't just in his head. This connection was a real, living thing. He leaned back, the cold noodles forgotten, and closed his eyes, picturing her face. The wide, dark eyes, the smile that always seemed to hold a secret. He remembered her telling him about her auntie's hospital bills, the worry creasing the corners of those eyes. He remembered the relief that washed over her face when he'd insisted on covering it, the way she'd kissed him and called him her hero. He opened his banking app. It was second nature now, another part of their ritual. The app's sterile blue and white interface was a stark contrast to the vibrant, chaotic world he was sending his money to. He typed in the amount, enough for the new medication she'd mentioned last week, plus extra so she could treat herself to something nice. A little tension coiled in his gut as he stared at the transfer summary, a fleeting ghost of a thought about the frequency of these emergencies. But he swatted it away. Love was about support, about being the person who shows up, even from halfway across the world. He was her rock, her hero. He hit confirm. The transaction was instant. David, I miss you more. Just sent a little something to help out. Get some rest. I love you. He set the phone down, the screen facing up. He felt a quiet surge of pride. This is what it felt like to be essential to someone. He waited, watching the screen. A minute passed. Then two. The room was silent again, the hum of the refrigerator taking over. He picked up the wooden bird from the nightstand, its painted eyes staring blankly. Finally, the screen lit up. Leela, thanks, love. You are the best. And that was it. The conversation was over. The warmth in his chest cooled to a familiar hollow ache. He stared at the message, at the abbreviation, at the space where more words should have been. Outside, a car passed, its headlights briefly sweeping across his living room wall, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the empty air. The next morning, the server room felt colder than usual. David was running diagnostics, the rhythmic scrolling of green text on a black screen a familiar comfort. His world had rules, it had logic. If A, then B. He was restoring a corrupted database, a puzzle of broken pointers and fragmented data that he could meticulously piece back together. He was good at this. He could fix things. His phone buzzed on the metal shelf next to him. A notification from a social media app he rarely used but kept for her. He glanced at the screen, a small photo thumbnail next to a name he didn't recognize. Jen Mercado tagged Leela Reyes and 4 others in a post. He tapped it. The photo was a blast of color and noise. A group of young women, Leela among them, were crammed into a booth, holding microphones and brightly colored drinks. Flashing disco lights painted streaks across their laughing faces. Leela's head was thrown back, her mouth open in a silent, joyous shout. The caption read, "Best night ever! So good to finally break in the new KTV spot." The post was time-stamped 2 hours ago. David stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the image with the message from the night before. "I can't sleep. It feels empty here." He checked the time difference. The photo would have been posted around noon, her time, long after their conversation. Maybe it was an old photo? He scrolled through the comments. "So much fun, girls. We have to go back next week. Oh my god, that place was expensive, lol. Worth it though." Nothing suggested it was a throwback. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He told himself it was nothing. She was allowed to have fun. Maybe her friends surprised her, dragged her out to cheer her up. Yes, that must have been it. She was probably missing him, and her friends were trying to help. The explanation felt thin, flimsy, like a patch on a corrupted file. He went back to the diagnostic screen, but the green text seemed to swim before his eyes. Later that day, during his lunch break, he walked past a break room where a couple of junior technicians were talking. "Swear to God, my uncle almost fell for it," one was saying. "This girl from Thailand said her water buffalo was sick and needed an operation. A water buffalo. He sent her 5 grand before he finally told my aunt." The other text snorted. "It's always a sick relative or a broken scooter. The pig butchering scam, man. They fatten you up with all the I love yous before they slaughter your bank account." David kept walking, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. The words followed him, echoing in the sterile hallway. Pig butchering. The phrase was ugly, brutal. He felt a flash of anger. How could they be so cynical? Their grubby little world had nothing to do with him and Leela. His situation was different. Theirs was real. He had the wooden bird to prove it. That evening, he was determined to shake the feeling. He'd cook a proper meal, watch a movie, reset. He was pulling ingredients from the fridge when his phone chimed with a video call. It was her. He answered, propping the phone against a bottle of olive oil. Her face filled the screen, breaking into that familiar, heart-stopping smile. She was in her room, the tin roof and hibiscus-scented air he always imagined. "Hi, my love," she said, her voice warm honey. "Hey you," he said, his own voice tight. "You're looking happy." "I'm always happy when I see you." She looked away for a second, a flicker of something in her eyes. "I was just thinking about you, about when you come back. We'll go to Sikihor this time, okay? I found a little house on the beach we can rent. It's so beautiful. You and me, no one else." The knot in his stomach loosened. This was the Leela he knew, the one who made him feel seen, wanted. He listened as she painted a picture of their future, of white sand and shared sunsets. her words a soothing balm on the day's raw wound. He was the main character again. This was his story. But it's so hard to get around there, she was saying, pulling him from his daydream. My cousin said the tricycles are a rip-off. My scooter is still in the shop. The parts are so expensive to import, the mechanic said. I don't know how I'll even get to the ferry when you get here. She sighed, a soft theatrical sound. Her eyes met his on the screen, wide and full of helpless affection. But don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. The important thing is just to have you here. The olive oil bottle seemed to mock him from the counter. The break room conversation replayed in his head. A sick relative or a broken scooter. He looked at her, at this woman who held his happiness in the palm of her hand, and for the first time, a sliver of ice pierced the warmth. He saw the smile, the wide eyes, the perfectly plausible problem dropped so casually into a conversation about their love. He saw the script. I'll see what I can do, he heard himself say. You are the best, she whispered, blowing a kiss to the camera. I have to go. My mom is calling me. I love you. The screen went dark. David stood alone in his kitchen, the uncooked ingredients spread out on the counter before him like a sacrifice. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the blue and white icon of his banking app. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, louder and more insistent than ever. He didn't open the banking app, not this time. He put his phone down and stared at the uncooked vegetables on his counter, a still life of his abandoned evening. The logic that governed his professional world, the precise, unforgiving flow of cause and effect, began to assert itself. He had a data set of inconsistencies. He needed to analyze it. He picked up the phone and went back to the social media app. He started with Jen Mercado, the friend who had tagged Leela in the karaoke photo. Her profile was public, a cascade of selfies, food pictures, and group shots. He scrolled, a digital archaeologist digging through layers of fabricated fun. He found another photo from 2 weeks ago. The same group of girls, Leela included, standing beside a shiny brand new scooter. The caption, written in a mix of English and Cebuano, read, Leela's new baby, beep beep, thanks to the sponsor, LOL. Sponsor. The word hung in the airless space of his apartment. It felt corporate, transactional. It was the language of business, not love. He cross-referenced the date, 2 weeks ago. That was right after he'd sent a large transfer to cover a leaking roof on her family's shop. The cold knot in his stomach tightened into a block of ice. He kept digging. From Jen's profile, he found Leela's cousin, the one who supposedly lived near the difficult-to-reach ferry terminal. The cousin's profile was filled with pictures of his family and, more importantly, his job. He was a tricycle driver. There were dozens of photos of him with his vehicle, proudly parked in front of the very terminal Leela claimed was so hard to get to. It was all there, a network of easily verifiable lies. The data points connected, forming a picture that was stark and brutal. He wasn't fixing a corrupted database. He was reading a user manual. The aunt's hospital bills, the new medication, the broken scooter, the leaking roof. They weren't emergencies. They were line items. He was an investor. The I love yous were shareholder updates. The I miss yous were invoices. The final piece clicked into place not on her friends' pages, but on her own, in a post he had somehow missed or misinterpreted. It was a shared meme, posted months ago. A cartoon woman juggling several phones, each with a different man's face on the screen. The caption above it read, "The hustle is real." He had seen it, even liked it at the time, assuming it was a joke about being popular or busy. He saw it now for what it was, a business plan. He leaned back, the phone dropping from his hand onto the sofa. The phantom sounds of geckos and waves were gone, replaced by the deafening hum of the refrigerator. He wasn't the main character in a romance. He was a recurring transaction in a ledger. The power dynamic was suddenly, blindingly clear. She didn't need his love, she needed his currency. Her power was in her ability to create a world he desperately wanted to believe in. His power was the button on his banking app, a button he had willingly, eagerly pressed again and again, buying his own delusion one transfer at a time. There was no anger, just a vast, hollow emptiness. The warmth she provided, the potent hit that pushed back the grey, was an illusion. He had been paying to feel essential, and the service was now revealed as a fraud. The loneliness he felt before wasn't a problem to be solved by a connection 8,000 miles away. It was the fundamental truth of his life, a truth he had tried to paper over with wire transfers and a small carved wooden bird. He picked up his phone. He didn't navigate to their chat history, filled with her carefully constructed words and his desperate replies. He simply went to her contact profile. The photo she'd chosen for him was one he'd taken of her on the beach in Moalboal, smiling, the sun in her hair. It was a perfect shot, a perfect piece of marketing. He pressed block contact. The app didn't ask for a reason. It was a simple, logical function. If A, then B. He stood up and walked to his nightstand. He picked up the wooden bird. He had once seen it as his anchor to a more vibrant life. He saw it now for what it was, a cheap trinket sold to tourists. He walked into the kitchen and dropped it into the trash can. It landed with a soft, unsatisfying clatter on top of the abandoned vegetables. For the first time in months, the silence in his apartment felt real. The hum of the refrigerator was just a hum now. For a week, David had listened to it, waiting to feel the crushing weight of the silence that followed the storm. It never came. The silence wasn't heavy, it was just empty. The ache he'd anticipated, the profound heartbreak, never arrived. There was only a quiet, clinical sense of absence, like noticing a dead pixel on a monitor. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, but the screen still functions. His life returned to its previous rhythm, but the underlying frequency had changed. He went to the server room, he ate his lunch, he came home. But he was no longer waiting. He didn't snatch his phone at every vibration. He didn't keep his screen facing up on the coffee table. He had unplugged himself from the feedback loop. On Friday night, an email arrived. The sender name was Leela Reyes, but the address was a string of random characters. The subject was, "My love?" He opened it. "Hi, my love, are you okay? My phone is broken, I can't get your messages. I am so worried. My auntie is sick again and I don't know what to do. Please write me back. I miss you so much." He read the words, and for a fleeting moment, he could almost feel the phantom warmth in his chest, the muscle memory of the hero preparing to swoop in. But it was a ghost limb, a sensation without a source. He saw the script, the familiar beats of the story, the broken communication, the sudden emergency, the desperate plea. It was a template. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel sorrow. He felt a profound and unsettling sense of detachment, as if he were reviewing a bug report from a legacy system. He moved his cursor to the delete button. He didn't block the address. There was no need. It was just another piece of junk mail asking for an investment in a project he was no longer backing. He clicked, and it was gone. He sat on his sofa, the laptop on the cushion beside him. The apartment was tidy, curated, and profoundly lonely. Nothing had changed, yet everything was different. The fairy tale wasn't real, but the loneliness was. He had treated it like a bug, a problem to be patched with a foreign currency. But it wasn't a bug, it was a feature. He looked at his hands, the ones that could piece together broken data and build logical worlds from scratch. He had been the architect of his own magnificent illusion, the lead programmer on a fantasy he'd paid to beta test. The understanding settled not as a tragedy, but as a simple, unadorned fact. He was never in love with her. He was in love with the story he told himself.